Though most arcade games eventually find their way to home consoles, some get left behind. Sometimes the controls don't fit onto a controller, and other times cold hard business reasons prevent a port from happening. The games in this video never made the jump, and therefore you might not even know about most of them. Here are 10 forgotten arcade games that never came out on console. Space Harrier was a huge arcade hit in the 80s, and Sega thought the year 2000 would be a great time to revive the series. They launched Planet Harriers into arcades, which blew gamers away with its amazing graphics for the time. The gameplay is pretty much identical to the classic Space Harrier, where you need to shoot enemies and missiles at very high speeds. For some reason, Sega never ported the game to the Dreamcast, which could have used all the help it could get at that point. 1 year later, they discontinued the Dreamcast and Planet Harriers never left the arcade. You might know the Strider series, in which you control a ninja who hacks and slashes his way through loads of enemies. Well, the 1996 arcade game Zoomin offers basically the same gameplay, but with even crazier levels and attacks. Many ex-Capcom staff that worked on the original arcade version of Strider designed Zoomin as an unofficial sequel. The vibrant colors really made this game stand out from the crowd at the time. Zoomin is definitely one of the most obscure and excellent platformers ever released in arcades.
Lock gas foils in attack position. Accelerate to attack speed.
The Star Wars trilogy gave arcade goers truly mind-blowing graphics back in 1998. Console gamers had to wait until 2001 to play the GameCube game Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2, which sort of looks similar to this arcade title. Star Wars trilogy let you play many famous moments from the movies, like the Death Star trench run. There's also a great Hoth level, including a shooting section on foot. And you can even fight Darth Vader in person. We still can't believe this game is over 20 years old.
Impressive. Most impressive.
Round one, fight!
Martial Masters is a great game that was released at the wrong time. This 2D fighting game arrived in arcades worldwide as late as 2001, and the majority of gamers were no longer interested. Everybody was focused on 3D fighting games instead, and even big franchises like Street Fighter and Guilty Gear were struggling. It's a real shame this prevented Martial Masters from ever leaving the arcade, since it provided fun gameplay with many different fighting styles. The overall package could have taken the market by storm had it arrived in the mid-90s.
3, 2, 1, go!
Prop Cycle never made it to the home consoles for a very obvious reason. No publisher was crazy enough to try and sell a life-size exercise bike to consumers. In Prop Cycle, you could control a man piloting a flying bicycle across 3 levels. In each level, you could fly through a course, popping balloons with different points on them. The goal is to score enough points before a time limit ends. This very simple concept was only fun because you were actually moving the pedals of the home trainer with your feet. Prop Cycle is definitely one of the most physically exhausting arcade games ever made.
Kill your enemy by any means. Gun.
The Outfoxies is a fighting arcade game which was released by Namco in 1994. This was basically Super Smash Bros. Without Nintendo characters. Instead of using cute power-ups, you had to fight each other with guns and grenades. You played as one of 7 assassins who were all hired by the same guy to kill each other. The Outfoxies has many levels, and they all have a very original look. The game was really awesome at the time, but it was 2D. As the market moved towards 3D graphics, the Outfoxies got left behind in the arcade. Do you know those athletic games like track and field where you had to ram on the buttons in all sorts of Olympic events? Well, Muck Breakers is basically that on steroids. This arcade game from 1994 is absolutely crazy. There are loads of button mashing minigames where you need to outrun a train or kick through walls of ice. Instead of throwing a boring Olympic discus, you catch and throw back a giant missile. We would love to see these superhuman Olympic Games in real life, to be honest. Sega used to be the king of arcade racing games with series like Daytona USA, Outrun, Sega Rally, and Virtua Racing. While every one of those series found their way onto home consoles, the arcade game Scud didn't. Scud, or Sport Car Ultimate Drive, was the first racing game to use the Sega Model 3 arcade hardware. The game was even shown in a tech demo reel for the Dreamcast in 1998. Unfortunately, the Dreamcast port was cancelled, and this excellent racing game never left the arcade.
Operation.
We are big fans of the Virtua Cop series and played every one of these light gun games. Everyone except Virtua Cop 3, because that never came out on home consoles. The game was released exclusively for arcades in 2003. Besides better looking graphics, it also had some gameplay improvements. Virtua Cop 3 introduced slow motion bullet time, and you could also switch between weapons. It's kind of dumb that Sega never released a Virtua Cop trilogy. That would have been a perfect opportunity to introduce this arcade game to the general public.
They wiped us out. We've got to save Ian and Sarah.
The Lost World Jurassic Park was a huge arcade cabinet that was released in 1997. 2 players could sit in a closed-off booth and shoot dinosaurs together. Sega of America even sent one of these massive things to Steven Spielberg as a gift at the time. The game had 5 levels that were all based on famous locations from the film. You also had to take on massive bosses like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's kind of a shame that this great light gun shooter never came out on home consoles after dominating the arcade for a long time. Did you play any of these arcade games? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.